Resourceful Designer, Episode 6, 8 Myths About Starting a Home-Based Design Business.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host, he loves the freedom of working from home, Mark DeCote.
Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Resourceful Designer. I'm just loving all the positive comments and feedback I've been receiving from you guys about the podcast, and so much so that I'm happy to announce that in lieu of my original plans of launching with 4 episodes and then following up with an additional episode for the next 2 weeks and then going to a bi-weekly schedule, I've received so much good feedback about the show that I've decided I'm going to keep going on a weekly basis for the foreseeable future. So thank you to everyone who's contacted me to let me know that they're enjoying the podcast. Now in this week's episode, I'm going to answer one of those feedbacks that I received from somebody who hasn't started their own home-based business yet, but wants to, but is kind of hesitant to take that first step. So I'm going to cover various myths that might be holding somebody back from starting their own design business out of their home. Now before I get to that, I want to share another resource with you, and that's Elegant Themes. If you use WordPress at all in your business, whether you're a graphic designer or a web designer or what, you really need to check out Elegant Themes. I've been using them for a few years now. The Resourceful Designer website is based on their award-winning Divi theme, which in my opinion is one of the best themes I've ever worked with. And the company as a whole is just made up of some amazing people. Now, when you sign up with Elegant Themes, you get access to all 87 of their themes, plus 6 plugins, WordPress plugins that they've developed. Now, as I mentioned, Divi, which Resourceful Designer is built upon, has quickly become one of their most popular themes. And it's because of the interaction you can do and how easy it is to build a website with Divi. It's all done with modules that you can move around, and it really, the interaction is so easy to build a website, and you can build just about any sort of website with it. And just recently, Elegant Themes launched the Divi Builder, which is a WordPress plugin that gives that option to any WordPress theme. So it doesn't matter what theme, even if it's not an Elegant Themes theme that you're using, you can use their Divi Builder plugin to use that modular functionality to move stuff around, and it really speeds up the process of laying out a website. Now, I've used various themes from them over the years, and I've always been happy with them. Now, as I mentioned, they also have a few plugins besides the Divi Builder. They have one for email options. They have one for social media sharing. They even have a plugin that'll turn a non-mobile friendly website into a mobile friendly website. Now, I can't stress enough how much I love the themes by Elegant Themes. And for what you get for the price, it's well worth it. You can sign up for a 1-year developer license for $89 per year, or you can do like I did and purchase a lifetime account for the one-time fee of $249. And that gives you access to every one of their themes, all future plugins, and you can use them on as many websites as you want. And for a limited time, if you join their newsletter, they'll give you 10% off your purchase price. So if Elegant Themes sounds like something you'd be interested in, head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/elegant, and that'll redirect you to their page. Now, I want to be fully open with this resource. I am an affiliate. That link is an affiliate link. So if you do purchase through it, I do get a small commission on the sale. But as always, I will never promote anything on my blog, on the website, or in this podcast that I do not stand behind 100%. And as I mentioned, I've been using Elegant Themes for years and really think it would be a big benefit to your business. Now, moving on with podcast. I received an email from a young woman named Katie. Now, I'm not going to read her email. I'll just kind of paraphrase what she said. Katie graduated just over 2 years ago and since then has been working at a design agency. She's doing well, but she really wants to start her own home-based business and work for herself. That was always her dream, was to work for herself. But in her email, she told me that she's afraid of everything involved in starting up a home-based business. It's a little overwhelming for her, and she doesn't know if she's ready. Now, I've had a few emails going back and forth with Katie, but in that discussion, I thought, what a great idea for a podcast episode. So I'm going to share with you some of the stuff I discussed with Katie, but I think it will benefit anybody out there who is either working for an agency or maybe is still a student and has aspirations of running their own design studio. Now, before I get into it, let me just say one thing. If you are a design student, if you're still in school or if you're learning design, I can't stress enough the importance of gaining experience by working for an agency, for some company in a design department, whatever it is. You really should go out there and gain that experience before you open your own business and work for yourself. The interaction that you get with other designers, dealing with a boss, dealing with supervisors, dealing with the clients, all that is priceless experience when it comes to running a business later on. And I know in my 25 plus years in the industry, I've seen many people start a business fresh out of school only to have that business fail. So if you are a student, if you are learning graphic or web design, I highly encourage you to look for work. Get a couple of years under your belt before you consider starting your own business. With that said, let's move right into the myths. Now, myth number 1, you need to find a lot of clients to make the business viable. I would say this is false. I started my business 10 years ago. I only had 5 clients, and I had those same 5 clients for over 6 months, probably 9 months before I finally picked up another client. And I can tell you, those 5 clients sustained me very well during that starting period. Now, I have to admit, I was very lucky in getting those 5 clients. It just so happens I was working at the print shop when I announced that I would be leaving and starting my own business. Well, one of the local designers that was coming in and having their jobs printed at the print shop I worked at, I had known her for many years. And when she found out that I was starting my own business, she reached out to me and told me that for medical reasons, she was thinking of actually closing down her business. So she asked me if I'd be willing to take over her clients. So that was a wonderful opportunity for me. It just fell in my lap. But with that said, she gave me her portfolio of clients. And out of that, only 4 of them decided to stick with me. Some of them just never contacted me or for whatever reason. But 4 of my first 5 clients came from her. Now, they weren't very big clients. My biggest client was actually a client that followed me from the print shop. But as I mentioned, those 5 clients kept me going for the first 6 or 9 months. And you don't need a lot of clients. I can tell you, I looked right before I started recording. I went and counted. I currently have 9 current clients. Now, when I say current clients, those are clients that I do work for on a regular basis, that I've done work within the past 3 months. And out of those 9, there's only 6 of those clients that I currently have a project on the go. 3 of those clients, I've finished a project recently, but I also know from past experience that I'll have another project with them within the next month or 2. So I only have 9 current clients, and I'm doing very well in my business. Now, since January of 2015, and we're in October right now, since January, I've done work for 23 different clients, and that's it. Just 23 clients. And some of those projects were just like a quick little invitation or something really small, like less than $100 project, and just kind of a one and done, and I'll never see them again. But 23 different clients since January. There are 29 different clients that I've worked for within the past year, but not done any projects in 2015 for. So that means in the past 10 months, I have 29, which I still consider regular clients that I haven't done work for. Now, I happen to know that one of those clients is somebody that I only do work for at the end of November. It's for a Christmas thing. So once a year I do work for them. And other clients are just people that will contact me out of the blue every once in a while to do a job for them, but they're not recurring clients. And then I also have another 29 clients that I no longer do work for. Either they've closed shop, one reason or the other, we don't do business anymore, or in some cases they've sold the business and the new owners are using somebody else for their designs. So with all of that, in my 10 years of running my own business, I've had a total of 81 clients. As I said, a lot of those clients were just one job, like design a wedding invitation for somebody and then never hear from them again. So you don't need a lot of clients to run your business or to make your business viable. In fact, if I let you in on a little secret, in all my time running my business, I have never placed an ad anywhere. I've gone to network events and I've done some stuff to bring awareness to my brand, but I've never actually placed any ads or paid for any advertising locally or whatever to attract business because I was doing so well with just my few clients that I had that I was actually afraid that if I started getting more clients coming in, I would have to start turning them down and how that would look on my business because I couldn't handle it myself. And my goal in starting my business was never to start an agency. I've got no desire to start an agency. I'm happy just working for myself. I do farm out some stuff every once in a while. but I've never advertised because I didn't want to be in a situation where I had to turn down work because I was just too busy and couldn't handle it. So that's myth number 1, that you need a lot of clients to make your business viable. And that's completely false. You can have a very well-run design business, whether it's web design or graphic design, with very few good clients. Now on to myth number 2, and that's that it's hard to give up your regular paycheck because when you start your business, you're not going to be able to make ends meet. Now, this one I will call false on. Although I know for some of you, it can be very scary giving up that regular paycheck. And if you remember in my introduction podcast in episode 1, I mentioned how I actually started my business a year before I left the print studio, and I was doing web design on the side. So I took a year to build up my business as a part-time business before I left the print shop to run my business full-time. So that's one way to do it. And that way you don't have to give up your regular paycheck as you're building your business. But I had a lot of limitations there where I was turning down work because of the conflict of interest with the print shop. I could only do web design at home, and if I was asked to do anything else, I couldn't. But let me tell you this, the regular paycheck is not that hard to match when you're working for yourself. Wherever you're working, whatever agency you're working at, I'm sure you're getting paid by the hour. And whatever time you spend working on a job, the agency is charging their client or your client much more than what they're paying you. So when you start your own business, obviously you bring your rates up to what you deserve to be paid, which should be much higher than what you were paid hourly at the agency. I know for myself, when I left the print shop, I calculated that I only needed to work 12 hours a week of billable time in order to match the same amount of money I was making working 40 hours a week at the print shop. Now, you might be saying, well, Mark, you went from being paid next to nothing to charging an arm and a leg for your design work. But no, that's not true, because you have to take into consideration, I don't know, maybe in your neck of the woods, wherever you are in the world, it might be different, but where I am, there's a lot of government deductions on your paycheck. So whatever you're paid by the hour, the actual take-home pay sometimes is 60% of what you were actually paid, your gross pay. But when you're working from home, a lot of those deductions are actually, in my case, none of those deductions apply. Yes, I have overhead and some bills to pay, but all in all, whatever I'm billing by the hour is the amount of money I'm actually collecting. So when I took that into consideration, my actual take-home pay from the print studio only needed about 12 hours of billable work from home to match. Now, what that means is, of course, if you do more than 12 hours, or if I did more than 12 hours, I actually made more money at home than I made at the print studio. But what that also meant was, if I were put in a 40-hour work week, that meant I had 28 hours per week to help grow my business. Now, remember, when I say billable hours, that's actual time designing. Now, you're not going to spend every hour of the day making billable hours. There's some days, even now, where an entire day I'll be at my computer for 8 or 9 hours. And at the end of the day, I only have 2 or 3 billable hours. And it's just the way things are working out. It could be because I'm spending my time learning something, or I'm doing bookkeeping, or whatever the case may be. So I am talking billable hours here. But in my case, as I said back then, 12 hours a week billable matched my pay from the print shop, which meant I had 28 hours a week. If I wanted to put just a 40-hour week in, I had 28 hours a week that I can use to promote my business, to go out to networking events, to work on my own material, to do whatever you want to help your business out. And that is a huge help. And I know that the point of this podcast is to help you streamline your business so you can get back to designing and not have to do all that stuff. But in the beginning, you really need to spend a lot of time building your business. And because this low amount of billable hours will more than most likely match your pay from your agency, you have plenty of time during the week to do just that, to build your business. So that's myth number 2, that it's hard to give up a regular paycheck because you're not going to be able to make ends meet. Now, myth number 3 is that it's complicated to set up a business. And I can say easily that no, it's not. So this myth is also false. Now, there are some things that can be complicated. If you decide to incorporate your business, then yes, you have to get lawyers involved, and there's a lot of paperwork and all sorts of things. But in most cases, especially when you're starting out, you don't need to incorporate. And again, I don't know how things work in your part of the world, Where I am, if you're working under your own name, like if I was designing under just Marc Decote or Marc Decote Designs, that's absolutely free. It doesn't cost me anything. And in most places, if you do want to register something, if you want to create some sort of brand name or register a name for your company, if you do it as a sole proprietor, it's not that expensive. I don't know what the prices are like now, but I think it cost me $120 when I first started, and that included registering the name of my company and getting my business license. Because you better check wherever you are, you might require a business license in order to work from home. And although not really incorporated into this myth, I just want to mention it here. If you are working from home, please check with your insurance company to see whether you need special insurance. I know I needed to add a special clause onto my insurance because I'm working from home. But that special insurance clause also covers all my equipment, my computer. If anything happens, my insurance covers it, not just under my home insurance, but under a special business insurance. But it's really not that complicated to set up a business. And I said, especially if you're working under your own name, really there's no expenses. You don't need to have a lawyer involved. You don't really need to get an accountant involved, although I do recommend it at tax times because your accountant will definitely find some deductions and some loopholes and whatever to help you maximize your income tax return. But I know that that's one of the things over the years that I've heard from a lot of people is how hard it is to set up a business. And really, it's not. And if you really, really are struggling with it, contact your local city or your local community and see. A lot of them will have a special department that will help people start small businesses. Small business is the way of the future, and a lot of communities are encouraging people to start their own business, and they'll have free resources to help you out. So look into that sort of thing. So that's myth number 3, that it's complicated to set up a business. And I believe it's false. Now, myth number 4 is you need to purchase expensive equipment. Again, this is false. Yes, you need equipment, but you don't have to buy top-of-the-line stuff. In fact, you can probably make do with what you already have. Now, there was a time when you did, in fact, need to have the highest end hardware in order to run some of the software that was available. But that's no longer the case. Nowadays, computers are so powerful that even some of the smaller computers have no problem running some big-end software, if you need that software. As I said, in the old days, it was needed because when you would send files to a printer or to wherever, you had to send native files in Adobe InDesign, in Quark Express, in Photoshop. Well, these days, most stuff is done by PDF. So anything that you have that can create a PDF is good enough, and just about any piece of hardware can do that. So because of this, you can actually get started, even if you have an old laptop or desktop, and you can still make a decent living in design until you can afford to get something better. But all the other accessories that you used to need that were staples in the industry are not really required anymore. I can't remember the last time I actually used my scanner for anything. My printer is mostly used for printing out invoices and receipts, nothing for design. And I've never owned a fax machine, so you don't need that. And in most cases, depending on where you live, if there's anything that you do need, you can always rent a co-op space for a lot less than what it would be to purchase some of this equipment. Or sometimes some business in your area will offer services where you can print stuff out. I know the odd time that I need something really well printed, I do have my printer, but it's just a cheap inkjet. If I need better quality printing, I'll just send the file over to my local UPS store and have them print it up and then go pick it up. But other than your computer, there's really not a lot of expensive equipment that you need. And as I said, you can make do with an older computer. And if you don't have one, you don't have to buy a top-of-the-line computer. These days, you can make do with a lesser model until you can afford something better. So that's myth number 4, that you need to purchase expensive equipment. Now, myth number 5 kind of coincides with that, and that's that you can't afford the software. And again, I say it's false. There was a time when if you wanted to get into design, you had to spend a lot of money. I mean, between Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, Quark Express, whatever software you needed, you can easily spend thousands of dollars. I remember when I first bought my very first computer and I bought a copy of Quark Express, I paid close to $3,000 for that software alone. Now that can be intimidating to some people, but now things are so much easier. First of all, Adobe has their entire Creative Suite, or the Creative Cloud as they call it now, where you can pay monthly. So instead of dishing out thousands of dollars, you can easily make a monthly payment, or I say easily, and you do need the money up front to do it, but it's a lot more accessible than it used to be, where you would need to spend thousands of dollars in order to get the various programs. Now, for a much lower monthly cost, you can quote unquote rent the software from them and have top of the line software to do your design work. Now, if even that is tough, you don't need to purchase the Adobe Creative Cloud. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, most jobs, if you're sending something to a print shop, nowadays, they want you to send PDFs. And if you're doing stuff for the web, most files will be like PNG files or JPEG files. So any software that can create a PNG or a JPEG, or any software that can make a PDF, can technically be used now for design. Now, there are some limitations. I wouldn't want you to say, well, I'm going to use Microsoft Word to do my design work because I can save as a PDF. That would be a little ridiculous. But there are a lot of alternatives, low-cost alternatives to some software, and in some cases, free software to use instead of some of the big names. If you don't have a lot of money and you're starting your business, instead of going out and paying for Creative Cloud to get Photoshop and Illustrator, you can try software like GIMP or Affinity Photo, Sketch, Pixelmator, Acorn, or Corel Paint Shop Pro. These are all software that are much less expensive, and in all cases, either free or a one-time payment. And these softwares do very similar to what Photoshop does. Are they on par with Photoshop? Of course not. Photoshop is the big name, but some of these software come pretty darn close. And if you really look at Photoshop, I bet you that there's 80, if not plus % of Photoshop's capabilities that you don't actually use. Most people only use a fraction of what Photoshop is capable of. So a lot of times, one of these free or less expensive software might be all you need. And in the case of Illustrator, you can try Affinity Designer, there's SVG Edit, Inkscape looks very good, Serif Draw Plus, and Sketch again. And Sketch was named in the Photoshop. So if you get Sketch, you kill two birds with one stone, because you can use it to replace both Photoshop and Illustrator. And I'm sure lots of designers out there are using these, especially when Adobe switched to their Creative Cloud and their monthly payment plan, a lot of people were not pleased with that, and they looked for alternatives, and they went away and they don't use the Adobe products anymore. So the price of software is not really an excuse. There's always something out there that you can get that's very inexpensive, most of the time under $50, if not free. In the case of stuff like GIMP, which is free software that is a very robust Photoshop alternative. These are definitely things you can afford, at least for now. And if you want, whenever the money starts coming in, then you can start getting stuff like the Adobe's Creative Cloud, or if you want Quark Express or whatever. So that was myth number 5, that you can't afford the newest software, and that's false. Now, myth number 6, I'm stepping away from the purchases and the money. And myth number 6 is that once I start a design business, I'll be able to work on whatever I want to. Well, that's a little wishful thinking. I mean, it's somewhat true. You can pick and choose who you're going to work with, but ultimately, it's your clients that are going to decide what you're working on. And sometimes they're going to give you some really boring work to do. However, you are in control of what jobs you go after, what businesses you approach, and who you network with. So that is one of the benefits of working for yourself or having your own design studio. Unlike when you're working for an agency who they assign the work to you, especially if you're a junior, you have no say. You have to work on whatever's given to you. When you're running your own business, you can go after the work you want. I know we're right in the middle of elections here in Canada. Our federal election takes place next week, and I know in the US, the presidential election is in full swing. Well, elections are a great time for a designer to get some really interesting work. Maybe not on the federal level, but locally, whenever there's an election announced locally, there's always new candidates that come forth. And those new candidates, you should be reaching out to them and offering your services, because it's almost guaranteed that they didn't think of that stuff before they put their name in. The very first thing they think of is, let's put my name in as a candidate and then go from there and figure out what they need. So as soon as you hear somebody announce themselves as a candidate, you should reach out to them and offer your services. And not just offer your services, but explain to them what you can do and how you can brand them and develop their campaign into something appealing to the masses. Because I don't know about you, but when I receive campaign brochures in the mail or whatever, if I look at them and they look like they were done at home or look like they were done by somebody's nephew, it doesn't matter what the message is. They haven't got my vote. If they couldn't spend the money or have the foresight to think about the look and the feel of their campaign, then what sort of effort are they actually going to do representing me should they win the election? So that's the sort of work that you can go after, and it's stuff that you want to do. But just remember, when you do run your own business, you're not fully in control. Your clients are the one that control what you're actually working on. And some clients might give you really, really good work, but there will be times when some of them will give you stuff that's just downright boring, but you have to work through it. So that's myth number 6, that you'll be able to work on whatever you want to. Now, myth number 7 is one I hear a lot from design students or people fresh out of school. And that's that they'll make a ton of money running their own business. They've heard it for so long that if you become an entrepreneur, you're in charge, you make a lot of money, and that's where the money is. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but yes, it is possible. But unless you're one of the really big names, chances are you'll have to settle for just a comfortable living and not an exotic one. Yes, there are designers out there who make a ton of money, but they make up a very small fraction of the entire design industry. But working from home does give you some advantages over running a studio or an agency. There's a lot of business expenses and home office expenses that you can write off that'll help put money back in your pocket. Because my studio is in my home, I get to write off the floor space for this office. Any sort of decorations that I get for the office are write-offs for the business. When we repainted the house, I was able to deduct a portion of the paint as a business expense because it was repainting my office. Home maintenance, electricity costs, other utilities, they're all things that you can write off. And they do make an impact on the amount of money you do bring in because of these write-offs. I mean, if you really wanted to be stingent about it, you can go as so far as to write off a certain percentage of the toilet paper that you use, or the window cleaner, the spray, whatever window cleaner you use, because if you have a window in your office, that window cleaner is used to clean that window as well as everything else. So a certain percentage of the $1.50 that you paid or whatever for the window cleaner can be a deduction. Now, I don't go that far. I don't keep receipts for absolutely everything and write off a certain percentage of them. But some bigger stuff I do, and it does make a difference. And of course, the amount of money you do make in your business is proportional to the amount of time and effort you do put into your business. The more you put in, the more you'll get out. I mentioned back in myth number 2 how I only had to put in 12 billable hours a week in order to match my paycheck from the print shop. But that doesn't mean I stopped at 12 hours. If I had the work, I would keep going. And if I put in 14, 18, 20, 25, 30 hours a week, that was all extra money that I was making way beyond what I had made at the print shop for the same amount of time. But with that said, chances are you won't make a ton of money running your own design studio. But as I said, you can make a very comfortable living for yourself. And of course, if you are lucky and you are one of that small minority and you're lucky enough to land some multi-million-dollar campaigns, you can make a pretty good living at it. But remember, the correlation between good design and lots of money is not always there. Some of the best known brands in the world, brands that cost millions of dollars to develop, the person who actually designed them didn't make that money. Chances are they worked for some sort of agency where they were probably paid an hourly rate. So myth number 7, that you'll make a ton of money running your own business, that one's hit and miss, but I would say false. But you will be comfortable. And finally, myth number 8. And that's that once you're running your own business, you'll be able to relax and enjoy life when you're not designing. And again, that one's false. Running your own business isn't necessarily hard, but it also isn't a walk in the park. Everything you do reflects back on your business and on you because you are the business. If you're working for an agency, you're just one representation of that agency. If you mess up, people will think, well, okay, they messed up, but the agency, not necessarily. The agency still retains its face. But when you're working for yourself, if you mess up, that's you, your business, and your reputation that gets affected. So you have to keep on track of things. You're also expected to stay current with software, with hardware, with design trends, with techniques, new developments in the industry. Trust me, a lot of your time will be spent studying, watching webinars, going to conferences, going to design shows, networking events. The education never ends. And that's one of the great things I love about this industry is that we're constantly learning, we're constantly evolving, which is one of the reasons that we charge our clients the prices that we charge. We are experts, and we have to be viewed that way. When a client sometimes asks, why are your rates so high? I'll answer them. It's because of my experience and my knowledge and my education and my ongoing education. You're paying for my design skills and my experience and my wisdom, but you're also paying for me to upkeep all of that. As I said, the education never ends. And when you're working for yourself, it's even more important to keep yourself informed. But of course, doing that takes away from the time you spend working on design jobs. So it does become a balancing act where you have to find the time in your day to be working on design and to be educating yourself and doing the other stuff. So for those that are not running their business, it does sound nice that you can just design stuff. And when you're not designing, you're relaxed and enjoying life. But that's not always the case. There's always something you can be doing for your business. And unlike working at an agency where after your 40 hours a week or your 8-hour day, you go home and you don't think about it till the next day. When you're running your own business, it's always in your mind. It's a 24/7 thing. You may not be sitting in front of your computer or in front of a sketch pad or whatever, but trust me, some part of your mind is always thinking about your business. And that brings us to the end of the 8 myths about starting a home-based design business. Now, of course, there are many more I could have gone through, but these were just a few I wanted to mention on this podcast to help people like Katie and anyone else who's thinking about starting a home-based graphic design or web design business. Now, if you are thinking of starting a business, or if you already have your own design agency or design studio, I'd like you to check out my 4-week marketing boost, which is absolutely free, and you can get it by going to marketingboost.net. And this guide gives you 20 quick tips, easy, some of them 5 minutes, some of them 30 minutes, daily things for you to do over a 20-day period that'll help boost your business's image in order to give first-time clients the very best first impression of you and hopefully help you land that big client. Because so many of us neglect our own business, our own marketing when it comes to this. So I developed this free guide to kind of give you a little push in the back to just look over your image to make sure you're not forgetting anything. And once again, you can get that guide absolutely free at marketingboost.net. And if you do, I would love to know what you think of it. Now, if you're interested in any of the resources or products that I mentioned in this episode, you can find all the links in the show notes at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 6. I would also love for you to visit there and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this episode, if you agree or disagree with my choice of myths, or what myths you think I should have included. Now, in next week's episode, I'm kind of going to do a part 2 to this, and it's going to cover things to consider when starting a home-based design business. Now, if you want to reach out to me, I would love for you to contact me via my feedback form at resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback. You can hit me up on Twitter at resourcefulD and like my page at facebook.com/resourcefuldesigner. If you've enjoyed this podcast, I would love for you to leave me a review in iTunes, and you can easily access that page by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/iTunes. And once again, I want to remind you about elegant themes. If you are at all involved in web design, I highly encourage you to check them out. As I mentioned, I've been using them for many years now, and I'm extremely pleased with both their product and their service. And you can visit them through my affiliate link at resourcefuldesigner.com/elegant. So that's it for this week. Once again, I'm Mark Decote, wishing you all the best in your design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.